So here in 3.4, we've got the if-else-if statement. What we're essentially saying is sometimes it's a little easier to have everything on one column down the left-hand side of your code than it is to have if, else, if, nesting that keeps going, to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right inside of your code. Essentially, they do exactly the same thing. It's just the if-else-if does it in a way that doesn't require all of that, frankly, that sucking up of lines of code. So this starts here on page 129. And actually, I think the best example is if I know it's either scroll down or start flipping over it's pages 132. So what we're saying here is in this little applet, and you'll notice that this one uses the J option pane, which we won't, but you will see an example, can I call it in just regular command line code later on, so that you don't have to worry about not seeing an example of this. But what we're essentially saying is take a score from a user and tell them what their grade is. Now, we could do this with a bunch of nested if-elses. So they would start here, on this indentation, then they would go to here, then they would go to here, then they would go to here, then they would go to here. And we would have a bunch of indentation that would be difficult to read. We would have a bunch of program blocks that might be difficult to read. Think about something that goes as long as the alphabet, right? If A, else, if B, if C, if D. And think of, by the time we're done with the alphabet, we've gone 26 indentations through. And that's a huge pain in the butt. Here, we're seeing that we can use the else if keyword right here. Remember, keywords all lowercase, and in this case, we do have the space in between. So they are using the same grading scale that we use, 60 and below for an F. Here's your C, here's your B, here's your A. That's all there is to it. So we would test our condition here at if, and you will notice test score is less than 60. We're starting at the bottom and we're working our way to the top. It's just a program design decision, and it's perfectly okay. We could have also said, started here with, the higher letter scores. But look what happens here. We're saying if test score is less than 60. Here, test score is less than 70. So how does this work? It's what's called falling through. So let's say the first time through I get a 59, right? So if test score is less than 60, I got a 59. That is in fact less than 60. So what's going to happen is this dialog is going to fire and say your grade is, and it's going to show me my F grade. Now let's say I take it again, but this time I get let's go all the way. I got 100. So look what happens. It's going to say if test score is less than 60. 100 is less than 60. That's false. Keep going. Is test score less than 70? False. Keep going. Less than 80? False. Keep going. Less than 90? False. Keep going. Less than or equal to 100? Correct. So my grade is A. So that fall through really helps you as a developer because it really simplifies the code. So if you start at the bottom and work your way up, even though that seems counterproductive or counterintuitive in the way we've been taught to think about how math works, it's actually really elegant here in coding. So the very last thing I want to tell you about the if-else-if chain is that it does end here at the bottom, line number 33, with an else. What we call this is the default or the catch-all. So you'll notice the invalid score there. So if I put in a score of 101, it's going to fall all the way down through here, not less than 60, not less than 70, not less than 80. It's not less than or equal to 100, 101, blip, comes down here to that else, the default case, the catch-all that says invalid score. If I put purple in here, purple can actually be evaluated as a number, and that number is going to be a big number. So it's not going to work here, 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 and it's going to say invalid score. So you always put that catch-all at the bottom because that gives you an opportunity to interact with the user. It gives you an opportunity to tell the user something went wrong here. And oftentimes you can help them correct on, what would have been a good input to put there. So the if else if statement, like this says down here on page 133, is essentially the same thing as nested. It's called nested linear ifs because we keep going inside of another if statement. But the advantage is they're a whole lot easier to read.